Despite reawakening after absorbing the essence of Zelda's soul in Skyward Sword, the Demon King Demise is soon overpowered by the Master Sword and its wielder, who brings the mighty eternal being, said to have conquered time itself, to his knees. As Demise falls, he vows that his hatred will endure throughout eternity, before he is ultimately eradicated. In the Japanese version of Skyward Sword, a specific term, rich with unique nuances and meanings, is used to describe the very nature of what happens when Demise's dark energy appears to be sealed within the Master Sword after he perishes. So let's analyze more of the Japanese version of Skyward Sword to first clarify the meaning behind the Demon King's name in the game's source language, explore claims of a reference to Skyward Sword's demise in Tears of the Kingdom, found exclusively in the Japanese text, before finally attempting to shed light on Demise's fate at the end of the game. In Japanese, Demise is referred to as Shuuen no Mono, which reads very much like a grand title rather than a conventional name. If this overwhelming existence does possess one, it's not mentioned at all in the story. The Japanese title, Shuuen no Mono, is composed of 3 distinct components, each carrying its own subtle nuances and meanings. While the official English translation, Demise, does capture some of the essence of the first part of the title, there's a certain richness and depth inherent in the Japanese term that does not seamlessly transfer into English. The Japanese word shuuen is a somewhat uncommon term that represents the ultimate conclusion or the finality of something, be it a life, a period, an era, or even an idea. It is often portrayed with subtle and poignant imagery, such as capturing the bittersweet essence of a farewell and the passage of time. In other words, the word is not just about the physical end, but also about the emotional and spiritual aspects of closure and acceptance, encompassing a wide spectrum of meanings and emotions, from the solemnity of death to the inevitability of change. It's a word that invites contemplation and reflection on the transient nature of existence and the beauty found in both beginnings and endings. In Japanese Buddhism, the term largely focuses on notions and meanings that involve the end of life, death, and the eternity that follows. It can be a very powerful word in this regard. Conveying all of this into a single English term, or rendering it into text that has to fit within a specific in-game text box, is incredibly challenging, if not impossible, and there is still quite a bit more to this term that reaches far beyond what I've mentioned here. Therefore, in my opinion, rendering shuuen as demise in English is an excellent translation given the restraints. The difference here though is that the official English translation opts to not translate the remainder of the Japanese. A possible reason for this could be that they believed it was not necessary in order to convey an appropriate nuance for the Demon King's title. The remaining parts of Demise's Japanese title, Shuuen no Mono, can be broken down into 2 parts. No, which implies possession and can generally be understood as meaning of in English, and mono, which is a fascinating Japanese character that once again can encompass many concepts that learning about can in turn help us perhaps better grasp another layer to Demise's character. Mono can function as a standalone noun to denote entities or beings, as well as a suffix to nominalize words and indicate association with an action, quality, or person, and can be used in a way comparable to the suffix in English, which is why in the past I've proposed the translation bringer. In Japanese, the character mono is quite versatile. It's often used to talk about existence, identity, or the essence of a being. When you see mono, it doesn't necessarily point to any specific gender or particular traits by itself. Instead, it's like a big umbrella term that covers concepts like being, person, individual, entity, and so on, all of which are very valid translations. What's particularly captivating is how the same Japanese character, Mono, plays a pivotal role in defining both Link and Zelda. Throughout the franchise, Link is often hailed as a hero, depicted by the term Yusha in Japanese. Here, the character Mono joins with Yu, denoting courage, which intriguingly alters its pronunciation. Hence, Yusha literally translates to a being or entity imbued with courage. Similarly, Zelda is frequently portrayed as possessing profound wisdom and is commonly referred to as a sage in English. In Japanese, she is depicted as a kenja, where, once again, Mono combines with another character. This time it's Ken, meaning intelligence. Consequently, kenja signifies a being endowed with wisdom, aligning perfectly with the concept of sage. Thus, it is commonly translated as such in English. Considering this, revisiting how Demise's name functions in Japanese becomes even more intriguing. The Japanese grammar employed suggests that Demise is essentially a manifestation or representation of the very concept encapsulated by the Japanese term shuuen, encompassing nuances of the termination or end of life and existence. Consequently, translating shuuen into English becomes context dependent, aiming to capture the appropriate villainous tone. While options like demise, end, conclusion, termination, extinction, finality, and passing are all plausible translations, none can fully encapsulate all of the nuances of the Japanese term. Furthermore, some options, such as entity of termination or being of extinction, may not resonate as effectively, at least in my opinion. In this context, Demise emerges as one of the most suitable translations in English in my opinion, as it does effectively capture an essence of the term shuuen. As previously mentioned, this term holds significance in specific contexts, often intertwined with discussions on profound themes like mortality, the passage of time, or the conclusion of an era. Therefore, it finds its place predominantly in literature and philosophical discourse rather than in everyday language use. This is precisely why Ganondorf's use of this term in the Japanese version of Tears of the Kingdom renders the scene all the more unforgettable, resonating with echoes of the Demon King from Skyward Sword. The scene in question occurs when Ganondorf addresses Link and the sages after the defeat of his phantoms at Hyrule Castle. While I deeply appreciate the official English translation of this scene, I believe providing an alternative translation will better illustrate the use of the Japanese word shuuen. Amidst the world dyed in darkness, Demise awaits you. While Ganondorf is not directly referring to the entity of Demise from Skyward Sword, the use of this term in Japanese amplifies the intensity of his threat in a unique way, precisely because of the nuances associated with the term we've just discussed. With that said, hearing Ganondorf utter shuuen instantly conjured images of Skyward Sword in my mind, as it's simply not a word that's very common. Now that we've analysed the nuances of the Japanese title given to Demise and discussed what Ouien no Mono represents, let's take a look at exactly what it is that's happening after Link bests the Demon King in battle and seals him within the Master Sword. Fi states that they have confirmed the eradication of the Demon King before elaborating that his residual consciousness has been absorbed into the Master Sword and is now sealed away. In Japanese, Demise's residual consciousness is described with the Japanese term shinen, which encompasses definitions like thoughts or thinking, and refers to the mental process of contemplating, pondering, or reflecting on ideas, memories, emotions, or intentions. It embodies both conscious and subconscious thoughts, as well as the interconnectedness between the mind, body, and spirit. But the nuances attached to this term goes deeper than surface level. Shinen often refers to strong emotions or thoughts that linger in a place or on an object. Specifically, it encapsulates powerful emotions that can leave a lasting impact on environments and objects, influencing beings who come into contact with them. Buddhist teachings reveal that these thoughts or emotions can be so potent that they can influence reality. The entity of Demise's final words in the original Japanese are laden with complex Buddhist terminology that are incredibly challenging to translate into English. The complex intricacies of Demise's words in Japanese have been a critical topic in many of my earlier videos. One of these terms is particularly significant to the sealing of Demise's shuuen in the Master Sword, and that word is onnen. Demise uses the term onnen during his final moments when he vows that his hatred and malice will endure through reincarnation. In very short terms, onnen refers to deep-seated grudges and intense negative emotions that, in Buddhist belief, contribute to bad karma, which is the sum of one's actions, words, and thoughts that shape their future. This karma affects the cycle of rebirth called rinne, which is another term that Demise mentions in Japanese, meaning that the negative energy from onnen can lead to unfavorable conditions in subsequent lives. Essentially, beings carry accumulated karma into their future lives, which consequently influences their circumstances and experiences. Yet, an individual's karma might not solely stem from their own mind and actions, but can also be shaped by the emotional energies surrounding them, which includes that generated by other beings. In Japanese folklore, these powerful grudges can also manifest as vengeful ghosts, spirits that manifest in the physical world, seeking revenge due to unresolved resentment. The term fire uses in Japanese to describe Demise's residual consciousness, shuuen, directly fuels and gives rise to onnen, which in turn is what can ultimately manifest into vengeful, rampaging phantoms, as exemplified by Breath of the Wild's dark beast Ganon, which is explicitly described as an incarnation of onnen. In essence, shuuen encapsulates the profound notion that one's innermost thoughts possess the power to shape reality and control or influence its natural outcome. These thoughts, whether positive or negative, hold significant sway over one's karma and thus impacts their journey through the cycle of reincarnation. Therefore, when Fi declares the eradication of the entity of Demise at the end of Skyward Sword, they signify the elimination of the malevolent force threatening existence, leaving only his shuuen behind. Subsequently, Demise's residual shuuen that amplifies the onnen or malice within the cycle of rebirth is sealed away within the Master Sword, where it slowly decays over time. The Master Sword, which is often referred to in Japanese by the title Taima no Tsurugi, can be loosely translated literally to Sword of Demon Eradication, but the additional underlying meanings extend much deeper. While this is a topic that I will be exploring more thoroughly in a sequel video to this one, the Japanese name of the sword also conveys the idea of eradicating evil influences, which would encompass the sinister shuuen possessed by Demise. Thus, in essence, this implies that sealing away Demise's excess lingering hatred halts the cycle of rebirth from enduring any more negative karma beyond what has already taken effect. At least for now.